devastating Hurricane Harvey seemed to come from nowhere, putting an abrupt end to the perplexing 12-year-long hurricane drought in the continental U.S. No major hurricane landfalls have occurred in the U.S. for 12 long years, while the rest of the world has been decimated by cyclone after cyclone. Hurricane Sandy was not a major hurricane, though it caused major damage. How many remember the scenario with Hurricane Sandy? Miraculously, weather forecasters somehow knew 7 days in advance that Hurricane Sandy would make an unprecedented 90-degree westerly turn exactly where it did. Climate engineering is not just a dangerous proposal. It's long since been a lethal reality for some 70-plus years. As Harvey was making landfall, the radio frequency microwave transmissions being used by the weather makers to manipulate Harvey were undeniable. Microwave transmission sources near Brownsville, Texas kept Harvey in check from the south. The Brownsville transmitter was completely energized as Harvey was guided on shore. Transmitter facilities in San Antonio, Texas helped to ensure Harvey would not advance to the north, in addition to scattering and dispersing any and all moisture that did make it that far. The bottom line, powerful frequency transmissions kept Harvey from migrating further inland and breaking up. So again, how did forecasters know so far in advance that Harvey would park itself in Texas and stay there for days? Due to anomalous high-pressure zones locking Harvey in place. Because the forecasters are reading a script of the scheduled weather given to them by geoengineering contractors like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. Raytheon does all the forecast mapping for the National Weather Service, NWS, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. Lockheed Martin does the same type of modeling for the FAA. We have the Foxes running the hen house, private defense contractors doing all the modeling for government agencies. The forecast track and behavior for Harvey was beyond unprecedented. Again, how could forecasters know so far in advance? Because Harvey's behavior was not an act of nature. It was manipulation with patented climate engineering technologies. The bizarre track of Hurricane Harvey is a glaring red flag to signal climate engineering, geoengineering operations. Why is the climate science community silent about this? The illegal federal gag order on all National Weather Service and all NOAA employees is the answer. The gag order is on top of the fact that government scientists have no First Amendment rights to begin with. Why would our government and others create such weather disasters in our own country? This is where dichotomous this or that thinking must be abandoned. There's many agendas being carried out at this dark hour in human history. This fact must always be considered and remembered. Solar radiation management is one primary stated objective of climate engineering. The combination satellite radar map shown here is very revealing. Massive atmospheric aerosol dispersions in conjunction with radio frequency microwave transmission grids are used to broadcast the atmospheric moisture created by Harvey into the widest possible region of cloud cover. The brighter the white of the cloud cover shown in the combination map here, the more heavily aerosolized it is. The expansive rainless canopied area surrounding Harvey as it made landfall is immense. The convective zones of precipitation around Florida are also being heavily sprayed with climate engineering aerosols. How will Hurricane Harvey impact temperatures in the U.S.? How will this massive atmospheric water pump help to cool the most populated zones of the U.S.? The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration departure from normal high temperature map forecast map shown here for September 4th to September 10th is revealing. The extreme temperature imbalances shown are meteorologically and historically unprecedented prior to the recent years in which global climate engineering operations have been an increasingly major influence. Geoengineering programs and processes are completely derailing all of Earth's climate and life support systems. The NOAA map, again, is shocking. Above normal precipitation is forecast or scheduled to continue over the eastern U.S. Chemical ice nucleation for weather modification processes will continue to be a factor in the ongoing engineered cool-down zones shown in shades of blue on this map. High temperatures in the ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure zones over the U.S. West will continue to extend the record-shattering, brutal heat waves there. The dangerous and environmentally decimating heat, UV radiation, and flash drought are not being reported by official sources, corporate media, or most independent or alternative media sources. Harvey has provided a convenient distraction from the planetary meltdown that's unfolding on our once thriving planet. How dire and immediate is the threat from biosphere implosion? It's far worse than almost any yet understand. How anomalous is the eastern U.S. cool-down zones from a global perspective? The global temperature departure from average map is very revealing. The other current focus zones for massive climate engineering chemical ice nucleation cooldowns are China and the polar regions. This is especially true for Antarctica, where the geoengineers are in damage control mode after the massive Larsen C ice shelf collapse. How dire is the ice meltdown in the polar regions of the planet? 2017 has brought both poles to record low ice extent levels, a fact that the climate engineers will try to hide from the public until the last possible moment. Unfortunately, much of the public is still all too happy to hide from unpleasant and dire realities in regard to the true state of the climate and of climate engineering. On that note, the following 2 points must be considered. First, there can be no legitimate discussion about the state of the climate without first and foremost including the climate engineering factor. Second, there can be no legitimate discussion of climate engineering or geoengineering without acknowledging the patented chemical ice nucleation processes and the engineered cooldowns these processes help to generate. The Chinese government openly admitted to this process of weather modification, and popular science covered it. Climate engineering can create short-term, highly toxic cooldowns at the cost of a worsened overall planetary warming. And what does all this have to do with Hurricane Harvey? A great deal. By constantly engineering cool-down zones over the most populated regions of the U.S., the weather makers are able to continue fueling growing confusion, division, and conflict in regard to the true state of the climate and of the climate engineering reality. The massive amount of moisture being pumped into the atmosphere by Harvey is an essential component in the ongoing engineered cooldowns being carried out, again, in the most populated portions of the U.S. The next radio frequency microwave transmission was recorded in Shreveport, Louisiana, almost 2 days after Harvey made landfall. As moisture tried to migrate north, it's being held back and or scattered by the transmissions. The manipulation of Harvey from the Shreveport transmission facility and numerous others was relentless, as this even more recent animation of the Shreveport transmissions reveals. Wave after wave of migrating atmospheric moisture is held back and in place from the powerful radio frequency transmissions. As Harvey tried to drift to the east, still more ground-based radio frequency microwave transmission facilities pushed back, like this one in Lake Charles, Louisiana. What are the other possible agendas being carried out in relation to the manipulation of Hurricane Harvey? The ongoing cyclone suppression in the Atlantic Basin and the Gulf of Mexico has contributed to ocean stratification and thus dead zones. Countless cyclones have tried to form in the Atlantic Basin over the last 12 years. They have been blown apart or directed out to sea by climate engineers. For those who think that this is a good thing, consider this. If the manipulation with Earth's life support systems kills the oceans, we die. If the oceans die, we die. Something to remember. The largest ocean dead zone ever recorded is unfolding right now in the exact region where Harvey is meandering. And this point also must be considered. All available data indicates that there's a growing sea of oil sitting on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, much of it from the BP Macondo oil well blowout, that a now deceased global expert on the subject said was never actually sealed. This recognized global expert also stated that the seafloor around the Macondo well was fractured and thus leaking crude oil into the sea, and that it had never been sealed and it could never be sealed. He went on to state that the illegal chemical Corexit was still being used at the wellhead to keep the oil from surfacing, to keep the public aware of what was happening on the seafloor. Matt Simmons, who was this expert, was found dead after a CNN interview, dead in his pool several days after that interview, in which he made disclosures that those in power did not want known. Though Harvey is churning up sea surfaces, the fact that this hurricane is being kept largely on or near land means that deeper ocean mixing is not occurring. The oil-soaked seafloor of the Gulf will remain largely undisturbed. And there's many other potential factors to consider. Geopolitical, global, oil prices due to the now offline oil production in Texas, for example, weather trading derivatives, etc. Many more other potential agendas. But there are much more dire considerations than those already mentioned. The intentional disruption of populations that can no longer be fully supported by industrialized, militarized society. The planet's life support systems are breaking down by the day. Those in power are absolutely aware of this fact, though their incurable obsession for total control compels them to continue their reign of destruction and decimation. How clear does the message from the global elite need to be before the masses are willing to face what is unfolding and what's being done to them? Climate engineering is nothing short of weather and biological warfare. It's the greatest threat we face, short of nuclear cataclysm. If we are to have any chance whatsoever of exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, credibility is key. Credible conclusions backed up by credible data. This will help us to form alliances with the climate science communities, the military, and other agencies by standing on credible, verifiable, factual data. We must all make our voices heard in this epic battle for the greater good. Time is not on our side. This is Dane Wigington with GeoengineeringWatch.org.